We're walking into GFN Radio Studio.
There is a wave of enthusiasm that's out there right now since the broadcast has begun.
Come on in.
Folk now see that this is not just a figment of somebody's imagination, a pie in the sky, but it's real, it has begun to happen, and they're excited and they want to get on board.
Almost 9 years later, after the project was first applied for, we had the good news. The license for the radio station had been approved.
We all put our fingers this time on the mouse button that would start the automation system. And on the count of 3, we all push that button together. And it's almost like a dream. We've thought about it for so long, and finally we got to push the button.
To see it now, a reality, is just a great joy.
It will have sermons, and it'll have kids programs, and it'll have music, and it'll have all sorts of stuff.
We've waited for 6 years and dreamed for 6 years to all push the button together.
I think we have been waiting for it to happen, we have been praying for it to happen, and we have been assisting in whatever little way that we can, but it's wonderful that John Bartel and the family has been here. They've waited patiently for this, and I know God has an appointed time for everything, and I believe the time is right now. It's wonderful to know that we have launched this. It's exciting.
Well, Grenada is a beautiful island. It's pretty small, about 12 miles by 21 miles if you find the tippy tips. It has so many fruits, things that I never knew the names of, even like sapodilla and soursop, and
Mangoes?
there's skin up and
Cinnamon.
breadfruit and
Cactus leaf. If you come off the...
this isn't
The
rolling.
spices.
Yeah, we have this.
Oh, I guess you can't smell it through the camera. Wish you could.
Well, even though it's a small island of about 100,000 people, roughly, there's a big population of Adventists. In fact, about 11,000 Adventists and more than 40 churches. And you might wonder, why do you need 40 churches on a place that's that small? But they're kind of neighborhood churches, and most people would walk. Not everybody has a car. So you have a real sense of community. And when we first arrived, of course, I didn't know anybody, but now we can drive and beep the horn on the corners and say hi to people. There's kind of a language with the horn to say, I'm coming, or thank you, or hello, or yes, I see you. Simba. It's gotten a lot smaller. It feels more like a town than a country.
For many years, there have been a lot of people praying for a TV and a radio station here in Grenada and throughout the Caribbean, actually, to broadcast God's pure message of heavenly music and pure spiritual messages and health and education principles that are elevating. And with that vision in mind, David Gates traveled all up and down the Caribbean, meeting with church leadership and with the governments and applying for licenses all up and down the Caribbean to put in TV and radio stations.
The first country that actually responded positively to our application was here in Grenada. The Prime Minister was very favorable to having an Adventist television network. Not all his cabinet agreed with that, and so it took quite a few years. But they opened the door and things began to move.
The applications for broadcast licenses were filled out and submitted here in Grenada all the way back in 1999. And those licenses now have been granted.
You can't do it by yourself. And it wasn't long before God provided a family, the John and Sue Bartels, whom I had met at a camp meeting in Washington State, expressed their desire to be involved in media and media work, and I told them about the need. God led them to come down here and began a long haul of many years of hard work.
Last year, I felt that the time had come for God to provide for the radio station, and I had a big dilemma, as I always have. I didn't have one penny. I didn't have any money for radio station equipment on the order of tens of thousands of dollars that I needed to get started, or even money enough to fly to the United States in order to purchase the equipment. The one thing I did have is David Gates was in South America, and I knew he was flying north in a couple of weeks. So I had a free ride to the U.S. It's the only thing I had. And I was wondering if I got on board that plane with David and went to the U.S., would God give me the money I needed for the radio station? And I needed $20,000 just to get started. And I really needed an answer from God. I didn't want to jump out and presume that I would get the money. I just wanted to know from him directly, should I get on board that airplane or not? And so one morning early, I was in my office and I was praying and I was reading my Bible, and I said, Lord, will you please just speak to me this morning and tell me what you want me to do? And I began reading through a passage, and I read all the way through to the end, and I got to the end and I got no answer. I said, Lord, I just pleaded with the Lord, please tell me what you want me to do. And at that moment, God put the thought in my mind, reread what you just read. So I started back at the beginning and started reading again. And right in the middle of the passage, don't ask me why I didn't see this before, the words jumped out at me, go in peace. As the Father sent me, so send I you. Very clearly, he told me, just go, and I will take care of it. I had very clear marching orders, and thrilled, I made the arrangements, and when David was flying through, I climbed on board and I flew to the U.S. After 1 week in the U.S., God gave us $20,000. Amazed, it almost was like a dream. I ordered the equipment, I had it shipped to a friend's house in Atlanta. I flew to Atlanta, we built the crate and we shipped it to Grenada, and the radio station project was off the ground.
We met with David in Chattanooga in the spring of 2008, and that was when John came to the United States with him by faith, not having any money and not having a radio station at that point. And we got to meet John and David and decided that we would help this project specifically.
At the same time, we had volunteers come to work with us, Steve and Sam Shadell, who God had blessed in a mighty way in the last couple of months as they collected over 500 CDs of music for our radio station. And they brought all those down here with them, and they've been ripping and editing and programming our radio station with all of those things. Thousands of songs they've been processing. It's been amazing.
Every time we would get CDs in the mail, we'd listen to a CD, and it was really amazing how our circumstances were at that time, and God just really encouraged us through the music that we would receive, and really touched us. And so we were really excited to bring the music here so that, you know, other people could be blessed by it and enjoy it.
So once I got back to Grenada, I started finishing desks and putting them into the radio station. I installed the air conditioning unit to keep things cool and dehumidified. I started installing the equipment, and that was all a really good start. But we still needed more than twice that much more in order to finish buying all the equipment, the transmitters, the antennas, the stuff that would go up on the mountain. And I called David late that year, and I said, David, any news on money for the transmitters? And he said, no, but just keep praying, God will provide. The next day, David called me up and he says, you know, I feel like God very strongly impressed me this morning to move ahead on the transmitters and buying the radio station equipment. And so I took all my equipment lists and I fine-tuned them, and I sent them out to different companies to bid on the equipment, and got all kinds of quotes. And about a week later, I got a call from David, and I can't remember exactly how it all happened, but we got a $15,000 donation. And we thanked God as a family. We knelt down, and we thanked God too for the remaining many thousands that we still needed. I think it was just a couple days later, we got another donation, $20,000. And we thank God, it was just an amazing time. We thank God for that money that came, but we still needed more. And we thanked Him for the remainder too. And it was just a few days later, the last donation came in. I think it was somewhere around $10,000 came in, and we had everything we needed money-wise. And we ordered all the equipment. We had it all shipped down here. And the equipment arrived. We began the installation process. We signed contracts to rent tower space. But putting all that equipment in is a big task, especially up at the transmitter site. And just at the right time when we needed it, God put together a team of 12 people, electricians, technicians, people experienced in radio, came together, and we went up on the mountain. It was amazing to see antennas get put together and transmitters assembled and electricity and panels go in. Everything happened in an amazing way. Studio set up pretty simple. We're running everything here from a Dell computer. Inside the Dell computer we have a couple of professional audio cards that send the signal up to our little mixing board. Feeding the mixing board we also have a tape player and a couple CD players so that when we need to do some maintenance on the system we can stay on the air with that equipment. The mixer feeds an audio processor. The processor has automatic gain control and tri-band processing. And the composite output of that processor feeds our little STL studio to transmitter link transmitter. There's an antenna up on the side of the building, and that transmits our signal up to the mountain where we have another little antenna that receives the signal. And that receiver feeds our main transmitters that send out our signals all over a large area of Grenada. And actually right at this point, our modulation monitor down here is monitoring our broadcast signal. And that is actually what we're listening to right now. So you can hear that God has really blessed us in the purchase of this equipment. It sounds very clean and crisp, almost as good as the CD quality. If I change it to listen to us right here in the station, this is the signal before it gets transmitted. And that's the signal after it's come back and being broadcast. So we're quite pleased with the sound quality that we have been able to achieve with such simple equipment. These two microphones are set up here in the studio so that we can do live broadcasts. We also have a simple phone system where we can take live calls and have call-in programs right here from this little studio. In addition to those items, the only other thing we have in the system is an internet connection, and we are actually streaming to the internet right now, and you can pick us up on our website, globalfamilynetwork.net, and there's a link there to click on the streaming for our radio broadcasts. What I'm waiting for now is to hear the stories of all those people whose lives were touched and changed because of all the efforts that our family and those missionaries that have worked with us along the way have put in.
One of the things that's been a really neat experience, especially for the children, is to experience a miracle happening.
When every month when there's not enough money, Mommy and Daddy will tell us so we can pray with them, and they're always open with most things, so we can pray as a family together. We can both say now that we've lived more than half our life here in Grenada, so it's more natural. It's just like the thing to do in life.
Every month, it's not uncommon. Most months we don't have enough donations for the expenses that we know are going to be there, let alone the ones that come up that we're unaware of. And especially Stephen, he says, I'm not worried at all because we never have enough and God always provides. So for them it's such a faith-building experience to know that they see, we're very open with them, so they see what we're facing. So we kneel and we pray, and then they get to also experience the prayers of thanks when God has come through. And we know that it was God because we had absolutely no power to change the situation ourselves.
We haven't come to the crisis point here yet, but the time is coming where the money will be gone and we will be totally on faith.
Living by faith might seem kind of scary up front, but the rewards are far greater than you'd ever imagine, because I mean, people who don't experience what we're experiencing never get the opportunity to learn about God and how to rely on Him moment by moment. And I know that if I had never come here, my relationship with God would not be near what it is now, because at home you don't have to learn to depend on Him for every single meal and every single thing you do. So the faith experience is second to none in growing your relationship with Christ.
Just simple things like food every day we depend on God for. It's pretty cool to see Him working all the time.
But not once in the whole 6 years have we ever gone hungry. Except for when it was like something.
Fast and prayer or something like that.
Yeah.
6.5 years ago, I was standing here on this point, enjoying the view of the capital city of St. George's here in Grenada. And as I was enjoying the view, I noticed that the city was surrounded with tall mountains. And I asked the Lord, how are we going to get our signal over those mountains? And as soon as I'd finished asking that question, the Lord turned my head and focused my eyes immediately on two towers that I had not seen before. Today, 6.5 years later, our antennas are installed on one of those towers, and God's message of love and mercy is going out to the people of Grenada. God indeed keeps His promises. And we have TV coming soon. We have radio already on the air, and we're expecting mighty things to happen in the next couple of months.
God will work in each country in an individual way, in His own special way. And I think that Grenada is ready to do its part in that push towards the global exposure of the message. And this is one beautiful way of it happening.
We're looking forward to going home and hearing the words, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." And Grenada is a key component to finishing the work here in the Caribbean and in the English-speaking world.